tech enthusiasts, business leaders. Welcome back to another episode of Tech Talks Daily. Today, I've got the pleasure of introducing you to a remarkable entrepreneur. His name is Dan Zavorotny from a company called Nutrisense. And he's someone that's achieved the impressive feat of building a $100 million company with over 170 employees in just 3 short years. But I want to learn more about the story behind that journey, the mistakes made along the way, and the invaluable lessons learned too. So if you ever wondered what it takes to rapidly scale a startup, you're in for a treat today, because our conversation will dive into the crucial aspects of effective hiring strategies for startups. And also, Dan's going to be sharing some unique insights on why startups should initially focus on build and sell positions, and we'll also unpack what this means for business growth. Furthermore, we'll also ask about his approach to marketing, particularly on unscalable strategies that often get overlooked. So buckle up and hold on tight, because today, no matter where you're listening in the world, I'm going to be beaming your ears all the way to Brazil, where we're going to be chatting to Dan. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Dan. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Sure. My name's Dan, and I grew up in U.S., but I was born in Ukraine, and my dreams always start a company, and somewhere in the space I felt passionate about. And so prior to starting this company, I was actually working as a healthcare consultant, and my job was to optimize profitability for hospitals, insurance companies, and medical manufacturers. And over time, I realized over and over that, specifically in the U.S., and I'm sure the rest of the world too, people keep getting sicker and sicker, yet we were spending more and more money per person. And so I was trying to figure out, how do we improve this? You know, in the old school methodology of just like, how much do you weigh? What are you eating? It just wasn't as effective, because we as a world of marketers have become much more effective. And so a lot of times the food that's marketed to us as individuals is just really bad for you. But it keeps shifting every decade, every 5 years. And so I was trying to find something, and I ran across one of my friends who was actually wearing a device called continuous glucose monitor. And it's a little device you put in your arm, it penetrates the skin a couple millimeters, and it tracks your blood sugar in real time. And historically, this has been used by type 1 diabetics to inject insulin, and he was using it just to improve his health. And I asked him, like, why are you doing this? And he told me, oh, I'm trying to improve my health. Do you know anything about this topic? And luckily, I happen to know a lot, both my professional experience as well as my personal experience, because my sister was type 1 diabetic since she was a child. And so he said to me, I'm thinking about starting a company around the space. Are you interested? And at first I actually said, that sounds like a very stupid idea. I don't want to do this. And he said, why don't you just pull one on and try and see what happens? So I went home, got one for my sister, put it on, and it just clicked for me with a couple hours. A lot of these things that I was doing historically in regard to my food, my exercise, my stress levels, I thought were good, but they're actually bad, and they're counterproductive. And it just clicked for me. And 2 weeks later, quit my job. We started this company right away. And within about 3.5 years, we got to about 170 employees. We raised around $32 million of cash and $10 million of debt financing, and been going since then.
Wow, what an incredible origin story. It took you from everywhere, from Ukraine, US, Brazil. And I'm curious, so from there, you got the idea, and how did you go from there to building a $100 million company with over 170 employees? Because before you came on, I was reading about you. You did it in just 3 years, right?
Yeah. I mean, so the fun, this is where I think the good old, sink or swim methodology worked really well for us. This was my first startup before I was working in healthcare consulting. And my friend, he started a couple companies before that in completely different space. So when I quit my job, he said, okay, cool. What are you going to do? Are you going to build or sell? And I said to him, build what? He said, software. And I said, I don't know how to do that. He said, okay, do you want to sell then? And I said, sell what? I do finance strategy, profitability analysis, modeling, things like that. I mean, I can build all the budgets we want. And he said, what budget? There's only 2 of us here. Like, there's no money. There's nothing to model out. He's like, you have to sell. And I said to him, okay, well, I wish you told me that before I quit my job. And he said, I thought you knew how startups work. So then I, took a deep breath, walked around the block in the street, got some fresh air, came back and I said, okay, I'll sell, because learn how to write software is too long. So I asked him, okay, what do I sell? He's like, well, software doesn't exist yet. I'm going to start writing it. I said, okay. So I have to pre-sell. He's like, yes. Then my next question to him was, where do I do it? He said, online. I'm like, which methodologies? And he said, I don't know. It's for you to figure out. I went and just Googled how to sell on the internet. There's like hundreds of different ways to sell on the internet. So I had this big list and I went back to him like, okay, cool. I found this list. Which ones should I do? What's my budget? And he said, budget zero. And in some way, interestingly enough, because we're limited by the resources, it limited the scope. Because I think we always have this like starter problem. You have hundreds of ways to do something. Which way do you start? But when my budget was zero, it limited down to like 6 options. And when I only had 6 options, I go, okay, much easier to start going one at a time and see what happens. And really the 6 options, like the three we chose at the beginning were Facebook groups. We also did influencer marketing, and we also did health and wellness focused podcasts. Those are basically 3 methodologies. And I think within 2 weeks, we had something like $8,000 in revenue.
Cool.
And next month, it was like 15, next month, 30, next month, 50. And then we just kept scaling after that. And then built out the whole marketing team. And over time, now I do zero marketing. Just people specialize in, anything from Facebook, Google, Instagram, Twitter, every single thing you can imagine between now.
Incredibly cool. So from there, you did build that $100 million company with 170 employees in 3 years. And I suspect it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. So I've got to ask, what mistakes did you make along the way over those 3 years? And what were the main lessons you learned from this entrepreneurship journey when you look back?
Well, mistakes were huge and all over the place, right? I think it's one of the most critical things that I would tell everyone is only focus in early on build and sell. This is this is what my co-founder taught me. And it's very easy to get distracted by these other things where it's, let's look at the PR, or let's look at, let's work on our HR department, or let's focus on legal, or, accounting, all these other areas that are support functions. They're nice to have when you're a big corporation, when you have something to protect, right? You want to reduce risk. But the early stages, you have no downside. Worst comes worst, a company that never really existed or that started a month ago doesn't exist anymore. So anytime someone tries to get something that's not providing value around create revenue or make sure you build product, it simply doesn't matter. And that's what I call it distraction. The second part is just vanity metrics people could try to throw out. When you hire someone and you try to say, oh, look, I have 1 million followers on Instagram now. It doesn't matter. Those are vanity metrics, right? Or I have 10 million people coming to my website. It doesn't matter. What matters is how much revenue do you get from those kind of customers? Are you satisfying your customers? Are they getting a high net promoter score to your product? Those things that matter. And so it always comes down to the root causes, staying away as far as possible from vanity metrics. Very critical. Another part is, I think I always tell people is when you start growing, you start hiring people, some folks like to hide behind technology, right? So we have people come in and they'll say something, oh, hey, if I had this software tool, I could do my job 6 times more effectively. Let me get a software tool, and it'll be a $10,000, $20,000 tool. And you let people do it because you want to trust people, right? But the lesson I always tell people is that when you hire someone, you should see how effective they are first. And they should be able to do anything manually before you need to automate things. And a lot of people have come from organizations where everything's just automated, and they think that as long as they have the software, they'll solve the problem. But no, very smart people can do the job first, prove to you they could do a job first, and then they can buy the software to scale it and make it more efficient.
And for any startup founders listening, inspired by your story, I think another big part of it was effective hiring for startups, from what I was reading about you. So can you tell me a little bit more about that? And also only hiring for build and sell positions at first, because it can be very easy to be spinning lots of plates and not knowing where to begin or focusing on the wrong areas. So can you expand on this a little?
Sure. So I think, you have to make sure when you hire someone that someone in your team actually knows what the job is to some extent. One of the hardest things as a founder is, you might have been a software engineer. Now you have to hire a Facebook ads marketer or a designer or a brand person. How do you do this? And I tell people there's really kind of 3 steps to do this. Step 1, you should just do it yourself for a little bit. Spend a month, 2 months on it. But when I say do it yourself, get obsessed with it. Break the system. If you take, let's say, Facebook ads manager, go in there, click on every single button you can possibly can, and take extreme notes. People sometimes will watch a YouTube video passively while they're maybe, talking to their partner or just eating, but actively do it. Where when you finish a lecture or you finish playing around with a Facebook Ads Manager or something, you have dozens of questions. If you have no questions after a certain event, you didn't learn deep enough. You didn't think about it deeply enough. Call the customer support line and ask millions of those questions. That's one. Number two, actually just get as much content as possible. It's listening to the experts, listening to many podcasts, taking a class, going deeper in this level, because you'd be amazed how many people around have this free knowledge available. And the third one is I always tell people, get a mentor that's 1 to 2 years ahead of you in that specific topic. Two things happen. One is, sometimes your questions are very specific and you want someone who can just answer that question for you versus going on searching the internet, because it's hard to find that. But the second part is, as you start interviewing people, sometimes you have blind spots, and having someone who's done it before that specific area, it really helps kind of catch that blind spot. And again, I want to make sure you're respectable this person's time, because these mentors are very, their time's expensive. So the way I do it is I only ask them to do 1 or 2 interviews at the end. So I might start with 50 candidates, and only the last round, there's only 2 people left. I'll just have this person interview them and say which one they prefer better and why. And a lot of times people say, well, how do I find these mentors? It's so hard to find these people. And I tell them, if you care deeply enough about a topic, and when you email people and ask them questions, people who don't know you will help. And I'll give an example. I sometimes get people reaching out to me because I offer help and I mentor people all the time. And they'll email me and say, hey, can you teach me about marketing? And I ignore those people. But when they email me something like, hey, I tried this strategy and this strategy. This one worked this way. This one worked this way. Which approach do you think is better? And which one's easier to scale? When someone's very specific about their question, I effectively appreciate them and I want to help those people. And I often do. Right? So I think as long as you appreciate and do all the due diligence ahead of time, the mentors are there to help, because most of these people are people who love to learn. And when they see you learning, they see making progress, they really appreciate it. And it's funny because a lot of the mentors I had when I started, over time, I became their mentors because I surpassed them in information knowledge. And this is the part I always tell people, folks say, well, how do I do these 3 things, but I can't get better than people who've done it for 10, 20 years. And my answer is, yes, you can. Most people do work, for them, it's a paycheck. They do their job to just do doing good enough and, not get fired. And so my belief system that if you focus attentively for 1 to 2 months on a topic obsessively, you can get better than 90% of people out there doing it. And so then once you get to that 90% mark of better than most people out there, then when you interview people, you have to basically say, hey, this person I'm hiring, are they at least 3 times better than me? Because if they're not, then guess what? They're not the right person. But they should be. They've been doing it for a decade. They should be at least 3 times better. And that's a good radar to understand, how do I hire this person, or do I want to hire this person? Does that help answer that question? I know I dragged on there for a while.
Not at all. It's such great advice. And again, when I was reading about you, I also read you got some pretty strong opinions about unscalable marketing strategies. It sounds like it might be a frustration of yours, but can you expand on that too?
Yeah, I mean, so if you think about this, people always, day one, just want to turn on Facebook ads and go, scale, scale, scale. And as we just talked about, I did Facebook groups. One of the things you do with these unscalable marketing strategies is a couple of things. One is you save money early on, number one. Number two, it helps you produce results and to show both you and your team that people actually want this product. But 3, it helps investors and other people who want to invest in your companies to realize, hey, is there something here? Do these people have enough grit to actually make this product happen? Entrepreneurship is hard as heck. And so if it's hard, you have to be able to acquire customers, right? And these have to be people that are not your family members or your friends. These should be strangers. So I always tell people, when I started Facebook groups, it was a daunting experience. I'm messaging strangers that I don't know, and I'm trying to convince them over a messenger to give me their credit card for a product that doesn't exist, for a website that doesn't exist. It's a hard experience. And people say, oh, that's impossible. How can you do this? And I think I was convincing 30, 40% of people to give me their credit card, right? For something that didn't exist. And I told people, I'm like, if you can't do this, how can you believe you can lead a company, an organization, and scale that? How can you convince millions of people to invest in your company and believe in your product, right? And when you get on a call, or you get on Messenger and you start chatting with people, you start truly understanding what their pain points are. You start truly understanding what are you building and for who you're building it for. A lot of times people put, just run ABC tests all the time. But with ABC tests, they're good at later on, but they don't help you understand, get that gut feel of, wait, why is this message resonating? Why is it not? You're just shooting darts in the dark. But if you have a feeling about your customers because you've spoken to enough of them and you convinced enough of them to sign up and pay you, then when you start, adjusting your ABC messages, you have a more targeted feel of what works and doesn't work.
And this feels like a great opportunity to introduce everyone listening to Nutrisense, because I'm conscious there'll be a lot of people listening, hearing about you for the first time. So for those people, can you tell me a little bit more about exactly what Nutrisense is and the kind of problems that you're solving?
Yeah. So Nutrisense.io is a website we put online where you basically want to improve your metabolic health.
Yeah.
And so why do we care about metabolic health in the first place? The reasons are simple. Right now in the US, 1 in 3 people are pre-diabetic. That's 89 million people. And Europe is no better, right? Middle Europe, South America, Asia, everyone is getting sick. Most of the countries around the world have anywhere from 20 to 40% of people as pre-diabetic. Those numbers are staggering. And this is a disease of access and poor quality nutrition. And I think the problem is that a lot of times we go to the doctor and we ask the doctor, hey, doctor, I'm feeling a little bit sick. What do you think? And they do your measurements and they say, hey, you are pre-diabetic, or maybe you have pre-heart disease. And you ask the doctor, what do I do? And the answer is very simple a lot of times. Eat better and exercise. But what does that truly mean, eat better and exercise? And oftentimes the doctor that's telling you that advice, they themselves are not eating very well, and maybe they are a little overweight. And so for us, the goal is really to understand, what does that mean? And so what we do is we give you this device called continuous glucose monitor. We give you an app, mobile app, that tracks your analytics of that device, and a dietitian. And what this device does is it tracks your glucose in real time. So as you eat a certain food, it actually in real time will tell you, is that food good or bad for you? And how good and how bad is it for you? Because it gives you an objective number to that scale. And so we see all the time that people, based on their genetic makeup, ancestry, microbiome, their sex, their age, their fitness goals, the exact same foods are good and bad for them. Or different foods is good some people and bad for some people. An example of this is simple. I can eat an ice cream and have almost no impact on me. Yet I eat a chocolate bar and it looks like I'm diabetic for 2 hours. My co-founder is completely opposite of that. And so you start seeing this, that we are so unique as individuals. So you can't just all follow the same diet. And so when people say vegan diet's the best diet, someone else says ketogenic diet, someone else says something else. These diets are always different, and you don't know why it's working for one person, not for you. It's because we're so unique. And so by having this device in your arm, you get to see in real time what's actually working, and you can stop guessing because you truly understand what's working for you. And you can immediately drive that behavior change and either shed the pounds of weight you don't want, hit the next milestone of athletic ability, or simply reverse or prevent type 2 diabetes.
Wow, that sounds incredibly cool. And as an ex-IT guy that likes to take a look under the hood at what makes it all possible, how does it work? Is there anything you can share about the tech behind this?
Yeah, so the technology is basically, there's a sensor that, there's a little needle that penetrates your skin, and it puts a little sensor, a little filament there. That filament then basically sits below your skin layer. It actually doesn't touch the blood officially, but it's still below the skin layer. And your blood cells basically attack it. They attack it because it's a pathogen in many ways. It's an external piece of hardware. And the degradation of the sensor itself, the filaments, drives the information to the actual sensor above your arm. It looks like it's small, very small. It's the size maybe of the American dime. Not a very big device. And then that sends a signal to your phone, which interprets that data, and it tells you what the glucose levels are. And this device lasts only 14 days. That's what makes it still expensive. A decade ago, it used to last 6 hours, and now they've gone it to 14 days. And you get the data on your phone, and what you do is you track your food or your stress or your sleep habits, and then we correlate that data with those foods. And the way we look at it is the more you put in, the more you get out. So if you track your ingredient level foods, we can tell you exactly what ingredients that are causing you harm. versus food itself. And it's interesting, you start seeing a lot of interesting patterns where sometimes people actually have very good diets, but every day at 4 p.m., you see the glucose levels extremely high and you try to understand what's happening. You ask them what's happening. And they start realizing that, hey, they had a meeting with their boss every day at 4 p.m. and they get that high level stress. And they're realizing that, hey, it's not the food that's causing me issues. It's the stress from my work environment. Or we see people who always have high glucose levels and we try to understand why. And we realize that some of these folks are living with just conditional, continuous, high stress environments. And they're so used to it, they don't know what normal stress looks like because they're always stressed out, you know? And when you get them to actually start doing some meditation, some breath work, and they start improving their glucose levels, they start realizing, wait a minute, this is what it should feel like. I didn't even realize because I've been walking around stressed for 10, 20 years that I simply didn't know anything else. And it became the standard of my life. And so with having this kind of data in real time really gives you that mind-body connection that you start realizing, how do I feel? And how do I look at all these factors in my life that are health related?
And how long do people use it for? Do they use it for a number of months until they've got a full understanding of what's good for them, what works for them, what doesn't work, and then they take a break and then come back? Or is it a continuous, almost subscription model? How do most users use it?
Sure. Yeah, so we have a subscription model, but it becomes in two different facets. People fall in two categories, really. People that come in because they want to learn, and then after they learn, some people leave, and some people stay and they change their direction from learning because now they've learned to more so accountability. Because as you know that going to the gym is good for you, but going every day is hard. Keeping yourself accountable is hard. And so when you have this device on, a lot of times people will keep themselves accountable because they see like, oh no, if I look at this, I'm going to be scared, so I shouldn't eat this food. Or if I look at this, it's going to be a bad number, so I should go to the gym. So in many ways, people decide, do they want the accountability or not afterwards? But yeah, we usually see people follow those trends where they'll stay for 3 to 6 months, or they'll do it for 1 month and then come back every year for 1 month because they want to continuously recheck. Because as much as we hate to say it, health is the only reason, it was the only thing over time that will degrade for us. And we need to slow down the degradation process and try to keep ourselves healthy as long as possible. But people say, what is it saying? The moment you're born is the moment you start dying.
Yeah.
So how do we slow that process down? And so we need to look at our things continuously. And interestingly enough is a lot of times as we age, a lot of things in our bodies change. So things that were good for you before may not be good for you anymore and vice versa. We see this to an extreme level with women. When women are before they have pregnancy, during pregnancy, and post-pregnancy, a lot of the exact same foods that were completely fine for them are no longer fine, and vice versa. Because a lot of the microbiome changes, a lot of their entire hormonal cycles change, and so a lot of the things change. So you need to understand that information, and you want to track this information continuously over your lifespan so you can have control.
I love what you're doing here, especially how you're leveraging technology, and I would imagine that you're continuously following tech trends on how it can improve you or your business. So are there any tech trends that particularly excite you at the moment that could help your business or indeed your customers?
Well, I mean, I think it's two parts. The first one's the piece of hardware and the second one is software. Around the hardware, specifically around more devices, there's devices going to be coming to the market that also track ketones continuously and ones that track lactic acid continuously. So now if you could track all three at the same time, glucose, ketones, lactic acid, you could basically even more so perfect your diet and your workouts. I mean, think about this. You go for a run and you run, and then you get tired and you say, okay, I think I'm done. But could you have kept going longer? Or should you have stopped earlier? You simply don't know. You're basically guessing. If you have lactic acid in real time, then you can truly know when you should keep going, when you should stop. So your workouts not become the perfect workouts. And ketones, again, it's a different energy source people use, alternative glucose. So if you're doing intermittent fasting, for example, again, you know when you reach ketosis, you know how to make sure you can stop your fast or keep going your fast. And so those technologies from the hardware perspective, I'm really excited about. And from a software perspective, I think all the machine learning we've seen, all the ChatGPT models, I think they'll start be able to be more effective at interpreting data. We have so much data now on our phones around our health data. I think the individual themselves, they get overwhelmed, the average accountant, the marketer, the software engineer, they don't want to sit there and read hundreds of pages of data points. They want a nice summary. They want to live their life. They just want to know what action steps to take to be healthy. And so we're excited about that. We're launching some of those things ourselves because we have so much data on individuals that we think is valuable for them. But looking for those insights is a heavy task. So we think that's going to be a real playmaker in the next 5 to 10 years.
And what's next for you and for Nutrisense? Where do you go from here? Is there anything else you can share about the road ahead for you guys?
Yes, I mean, it's the two things I mentioned, the hardware and software, but also it's starting to integrate more data points. It's starting to add in blood work, starting to upload annual physicals, start to upload, track your cholesterol so we can start looking into heart disease. Starting to also, explore adding more healthcare professionals. So it's not just dietitians, but doctors, physical therapists. Something like 80% of all doctor visits don't need to happen in real time. Why is it that we still go to the doctor and sit, for 30 minutes and they come talk to you for 5 minutes? It's a very inefficient process, both for the consumer as well as the doctor. Plus expensive. And so why can't we do this all online? We have the tools. Let's make people healthier. And also, I mean, as you know, there's a doctor shortage all around the world. So let's make the doctors almost call them super doctors. So they're way more efficient. So that's kind of where we're heading toward, using the data to make a doctor more efficient, effective, so they can answer those questions faster and more precisely for the individual.
Well, we started the podcast today talking about your origin story, what put you on this path. Now, as we've come full circle, I'd love for you to look back on your career and think about the funniest or most interesting story that has happened to you along the way. I'm sure you've got more than a few of them, but is there anything you'd share with us today?
Yeah, I think, the one that really pops in my head a lot of times is when we were first starting, we got 10 customers and we sent a package to one of our customers in Arizona, and the shipping post office lost the package. And so the customer emailed us, her name was Katie, and she emailed us and said, "Hey, sorry, I lost the package never came. Can I get a refund, please?" And we said, "Oh, we'll send you another package." And she said, No, actually, I'm moving to France, so I don't need the package. I'm sorry, I'm leaving today. And at this point, we were very desperate for clients, and we need feedback. We just released our app. We need people to give us feedback. Every single customer matters. And I told my co-founder, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to get an airplane from Chicago this time and just go to France and just hand deliver this package to her.
Wow.
Because we need this customer. And so I got an airplane, hand delivered to her. We ended up having lunch, have a great discussion about health, why she signed up. I got to dive deeply into the customer interview, enjoy some French wine. And what was fascinating is we stayed in touch after that. And 1 year later, she actually ended up joining our company as a director of operations. And it was employee number 15 in our company. And she was an incredible performer and ended up getting promoted several times. And now she runs a team of about 50 people in our company. So this individual who literally just had a lost package became one of our best leaders in the company now, because she had a mission and a belief in what we're doing. And she was a customer first. Ironically enough, we've now hired about 5 of our customers to become our employees and leaders, because people are super passionate about what we're doing. And you can't substitute passion for hard work.
Wow, what an incredible story. A goosebump moment there. Absolutely love it. And for anyone listening, just wanting to find out more information about Nutrisense and the work that you're doing, what's the best starting point for everything?
Sure. People can check out Nutrisense.io. That's Nutrisense.io. We also finally own Nutrisense.com. You can check that out as well. I think we were starting Nutrisense.io was like $8. And Nutrisense.com was $50,000. So we bought the $8 domain. But a couple of years later, we finally, decided to shell off of the .com to make it more professional. Or you can also add me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to help other founders and help to chat people about any topic they have interest in.
Well, I love chatting with you today about how you built a $100 million company with over 170 employees in 3 years, and also for sharing your mistakes and lessons learned along the way. But I think that funny or interesting story you left us with, that's the kind of thing that will stay with me for a long time. So thank you so much for taking the time to come on here, share your story and your insights. Love to stay in touch with you, see how your journey evolves in the years ahead. But just thanks for joining me today, Dan.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, that brings us to another end of the Tech Talks Daily podcast. I'd just like to extend a huge thank you to Dan for sharing his time and invaluable insights into the nuts and bolts of building and scaling a successful startup. And I think his journey, the challenges he faced, the lessons he learned, all provide crucial takeaways for anyone venturing in the startup world. And his insights on effective hiring for startup, the emphasis on building and selling positions initially, and unscalable marketing strategies that all collectively offer unique perspectives, I think, for founders to keep in mind when navigating the startup landscape. But maybe you're a startup founder. Maybe we just scratched the surface today. I don't have all the answers. Today's guest didn't have all the answers. I think collectively we might have a chance of getting them though. So if you'd like to share some of your insights, some of the lessons you've learned, just email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. Connect with me on LinkedIn, just @NeilC.Hughes. I'm the easiest guy in the world to find. But in the meantime, continue to explore, innovate, stay curious, and hopefully join me again tomorrow. But thank you for listening as always, and until next time, don't be a stranger.